Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My next guest is an Oscar-nominated screenwriter for his work on Braveheart, the director of such films as The Man in the Iron Mask, We Were Soldiers, Secretariat, and most recently, Heaven is for Real. In his spare time, he's a novelist, a songwriter, martial artist, and committed Christian. He's written a fascinating new memoir, Living the Braveheart Life, Finding the Courage to Follow Your Heart. In it, he talks about how he discovered the legendary Scottish warrior depicted in the film, and how telling the story of William Wallace changed the direction of his life. I caught up with him recently at his home in California. Here's my exclusive interview with Randy Wallace. I want to start, Randy, with your father, Thurman. What did he teach you about storytelling? In your book, you talk about how what a sort of garrulous, warm, engaging personality he was. How did he teach you to tell stories?
My father taught me that a story has to be relevant. It has to mean something to engage the audience. He would tell stories because he wanted to connect with people, so that was the first thing. But he would tell a story that they cared about, that was about something that would entertain them and captivate them and ultimately inspire them. My father was about inspiration.
He was a salesman.
He was a salesman.
Right, by trade.
But my father's thing was, I'll never sell anyone something that won't get them to prosper. He would say to me, if our customers don't prosper, then we starve.
And he did not want his son being a storyteller. He didn't want you to be a writer.
No, he wanted me to be a salesman. He wanted me to be in the family business. And in a certain way I am, but in a much grander or different sense. Than
you have different customers than we have.
Yes, different customers.
Very different customers. You go to Duke and you decide to study religion.
Yeah.
Why would you study religion? One practices it, but did you have aspirations of leading a church, being a pastor?
To me, that would have been a little bit getting it the wrong way around. I wanted to find whatever it was that I was made to do, and I was following religion because it fascinated me. I thought, and still do, I still believe that the study of faith, what we would die for, is about what we would live for. Like, I've never been so concerned with life after death as much as I am with life after birth. How do we live fully? How do we have life and have it more abundantly?
And music became a big passion of yours during this period. And yet, you weren't so sure if that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. I had a plan. It's always annoyed me that God's plans are better than my own. I mean, that really disturbs me.
I have that routine too. I know of what you speak.
And so I love music, and I love the feeling that I get when, and we, in our church, we would all sing at the top of our lungs and the top of our hearts, so that a congregation lifting up their voices would be as close to God as I knew how it was possible to feel. And when I would write a song or sing, as every aspiring songwriter does, in the bathroom, because it sounds better.
That's right, you get all that resonance.
Yeah. When I would do that, I would feel a real sense of passion, and I wanted to follow that passion. So I thought, this will be the path, at least the one I'll explore first.
And you have a meeting with Chris Christopherson at one point, which you were telling me about. It's also in the book. Tell me about that meeting. It was rather pivotal for you. I mean, it set you down a path.
It absolutely did. I thought then and think now that he's one of the greatest American poets who's ever been. I loved his music, and he was doing poetry in music, and though no one ever thought of Chris Christopherson as the greatest of singers, like the singers who sang his songs,
right.
I thought he was a terrific performer and singer because he was authentic. I wanted to be like him. Here he was, he was an Army Ranger. He had been a boxer and a football player. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He had studied Byron. He was a poet through and through. And here he was, also commercially successful in Nashville, but he wasn't the Nashville that I had grown up knowing. He was something new. So he was coming to my university. I finagled to be backstage. I went up to him, I tried not to interrupt him, and I said, you know, I really want to write songs. And he said, then you've got to go to Nashville.
So you end up in Nashville, you're writing music. What happened?
Well, I signed with the most successful Nashville music publisher, Tree Music, and I was around some terrific songwriters. I think the big, and many of them were having huge success, and I wasn't, at least in the ways of the world.
Right.
I think I was where I needed to be, but I wasn't writing songs that were becoming hits. And a great country icon named Wesley Rose, who had been Roy Acuff's partner, or his father had been, said to me, is your heart really here? And I said, no, I don't think it is. And he said, don't sell your soul for a few pennies. You've got to go where your heart is. If this is the kind of music that you want to be doing, stay here. But if it's not, and he had listened to my songs and he liked them, but he said, this isn't what the country music world is doing right now. You need to find someplace else.
And you end up in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Why Hollywood?
Why Hollywood was a question that everyone who loved me asked. And I wanted to come to California largely because I wanted the challenge. I wanted to be in an environment where everybody didn't believe as I believed. It was my same idea that I've always followed of, I'm in some ways created to be a stranger in a strange land.
And still with the intention of writing music.
Yes.
Now, you end up working with Stephen Cannell, a great writer, producer of television, did hit after hit after hit. What did you learn from him? How did you end up there, from music to writing for television?
Steve was a genius at many things, not only at writing, but at teaching. But I think the greatest thing he conveyed to me was a passion. He loved what he was writing. And that taught me an enormous thing. That was a great gift. To say, you know, go down the road of where you're really having fun. He once said to me, you know why people do business with us? And I was his protege for several years. He said, yes, they know we'll always deliver a professional product. Yes, they know we'll do it on time. But the main thing is that they enjoy it. They like us. And that's important to remember. So he was much like my father in that way.
You have a Braveheart moment. That's what you call it in your book. When you're still writing, but things aren't clicking, and you're worried that you're not going to be able to feed your family. You have a family now.
Yes.
You're married, you have a family. I want you to go back 10 years prior. You're in Scotland.
Right.
And you're visiting a castle.
Yes.
And here's a statue. And you thought what when you saw that statue of William Wallace?
I felt that I had come across a story that was as provocative as if someone had said, St. Peter and Judas Iscariot were the same person. It was that big a story, that unique a story for me. Here's the story of a man who is Scotland's greatest hero. He has the same name as I do. I believe in every fiber of my being that he's actually one of my ancestors, but I've never heard of him. Why has he been buried to history? Why is he lost? Who was this man? How did he become his country's greatest hero? What made him that? And was there something in the quality of the way he lived and died that transformed Robert the Bruce from being a scurrilous coward to being his country's greatest king? That scurrilous coward part, that transformation part, was what I was looking for in my own life. People will say to me, you know, don't you see yourself as William Wallace? And I go, nah, I kind of see myself as Robert the Bruce.
Yeah, I read that in the book. Of all the characters, I mean, this is the traitor. This is the guy who ends up being the traitor. Now, he has his turnabout at the end, but he goes to kill Wallace at one point.
Yeah. And you know, when I think about these things, when I actually pause to reflect on them, it sort of explains why, and I talk about this in the book too, why I follow Jesus. Because here's this element. You know, people say all these things that we think Jesus taught, and he's a great, yes, and he did, and as C.S. Lewis would say, he's a great moral teacher, of course. But let's forget the nonsense about that's all he was, or he was, that's what makes him distinct. The story for me is, there are 100 sheep, and 99 of them are in the fold, and one of them is lost. And the shepherd goes out and finds that lost one. I'm not the shepherd, I'm the lost sheep. I'm really clear about that. And that is transformative.
So you have a calling, I don't think that's too strong a word, to write this story.
Yes.
You don't even really know why at the time.
That's right.
You're just drawn to it. And we have to say, there are a lot of question marks about William Wallace. I mean, the truth of the matter is, Randy Wallace gave William Wallace a lot more shape than we had before this screenplay was written.
Right, nobody really knows anything William Wallace said.
Yeah, well, now we know what he said.
Well,
freedom! We now know what he said, but we're not sure if he said it or not in life, but he did say it.
Right.
Tell me about that Braveheart moment where you are really on the fence. You only have one more screenplay in you before you're going to run out of time and money.
Right.
And your father wants you to come elsewhere, go do something else.
That's right. And I'm worse than on the fence. I am broken, and I am desperate. I am so overwrought that I can't do the habits of discipline that have gotten me to that point. My hands are shaking. My stomach's in a knot. I can't sleep. I can't eat. And I'm thinking, my sons are going to see me collapse. And I saw my own father collapse.
When he was 38.
Yes, and about the age I was then. And so I get on my knees, and I say, as sincerely to God as I know how to pray, if what I am to teach my sons is what happens when I collapse, when a man gets broken, and this gives me a chance to teach them how a man gets up, the way my father taught me. If that's what we're doing here, then give me the courage to bear this. Bring this to me and let me face it. But if I go down, let me go down, not on my knees to the false idols of Hollywood, to success, money. If I go down, let me go down with my own flag flying, saying, this is what I believe. This is who I am. And it was from not only that moment for me, but that gave me the words that made me understand what I thought William Wallace was doing on the battlefield, in the dungeon, on the executioner's platform. That's what gave me the window to see the story.
And it was really an insight into the battle, that internal battle that you were going through, that we all go through at some point.
Yes, yes. I think we all have our Braveheart moments that define us and that shape the rest of our lives.
Betrayal, you write about this. There's a whole chapter in the book about betrayal, which is something that it's really at the core. I didn't think about it, I guess, watching the movie, and I've seen it so many times, but it really is at the heart of the story.
Yes.
Because that's where the transformation happens.
That's right. That's right.
Through that betrayal.
That's right.
Talk to me a moment about your mother. You say somewhere in here that Braveheart would never have happened but for her.
Yes.
That seems curious. I understand your dad, but Mom?
I struggle to understand this, Ray, all the time in my life, how we combine all of us combine an aspect of the masculine and the feminine, whether we are men or women. How do you, and we have these little neat packages we make of it. But the fact was, in my life, my father was the one who sort of loved me unconditionally, and my mother was the one who had the standards. It was my mother who once said to me, son, if they crucified Jesus Christ, there are going to be some people that don't like you. And my mother believed, as Mark Twain did, if you were standing with the majority, it is time to pause and reflect. If everyone likes you, you're doing something wrong. So my mother gave me this attitude, this posture, I'm looking for my battle. I'm looking for the place in life where I draw the line and say, right here. I finally found the spot, right here. I don't step back from this point. I'll either die or I will be victorious, but even if I die, I do not lose because I am fighting for what I am for who I am and what's right.
While we're talking about women and Braveheart, what do you think is the magic, if it's there, that draws women in? Because normally, historical action, sandal and sword epics, this is not feminine fare. Yet, women are drawn to this story. What is it?
Women recognize authentic love. And that's what women want. You know, Sigmund Freud didn't have to look very far. It was right there.
Yeah.
Women want to be loved, and they want to be connected to love. And that's what the story of Braveheart is about. It's not a war story, it's a love story. I tell the story in the book of the young woman who watched a screening and at the Q&A afterwards stood up and said, I don't have a question. I just want to tell you my fiance died 6 months ago and told me before he died he wanted me to watch Braveheart so I would understand the way he loved me. And there's a sense that I wrote this book not just for her and not for me, but for that young man who understood that life is eternal, that what really is life is not about the scars or the sword that pierces our heart and makes our blood leak out. Our life doesn't leave us.
You also talk about fear in the book, how fear holds us back, stops us, and again, you tie it into women in a neat way, and you say, the moment a woman says, we need to talk about our relationship, you share that with people.
Well,
to me, this was a huge insight. I think you're right.
There was some comedian that said when his wife comes in and says, we need to talk, what he hears is, can I take a drill and just drill it into your brain? What I mean in the book is that so often those conversations come from a place of fear, and that what the woman is really saying to the man in that regard is that I don't really trust you, so I want to take over the reins. So I want to take away from you all of your authenticity and your integrity in this, and I want to destroy any chance I have for loving you. I want to make sure we kill it now because I'm afraid it's going to die. As opposed to, I will communicate with every way I live my life. I will be responsible for myself to the greatest extent, but understand what I love is you and what I want is to give you me. That's a whole different thing than being driven by fear.
I was amazed when, in the book, when you look at the totality of how long did it take you to write this screenplay, Braveheart?
The screenplay? Well, it took me 10 years to get to
Started.
sit down into the chair.
Yeah.
And it took me about 4 months to write. It came with remarkable rapidity for all of my. I've never written a screenplay any faster.
No outline.
None. No.
Not at all.
No.
Now, Randy? How do you sit down with no? You didn't know where you were going. You didn't know how this was going to end, even.
I didn't know how it would start. And in fact, the whole beginning of Braveheart, I wrote in an effort to just warm up. I didn't want the story to start in my conscious mind. I didn't want the story to start with William Wallace as a boy. So I just sat down to warm up, and my first words were, I will tell you of William Wallace. Historians will say I'm a liar, but history is written by those who have hanged the heroes. I never saw those words coming, and suddenly I kind of sat back and went, that's interesting. I'm curious to see where the rest of this goes. I didn't know when they were standing at the grave of his father and mother that the little girl would give him a flower. I didn't know that he would keep it.
Until you were there.
Until I was there. And I didn't know that she was there at his execution. When it happened, it took my breath away. I sat at my desk and I wept. And that was, to me, part of what I want this book to be. Sure, I want to share the story, particularly for my own sons.
Right.
But I wanted to share for everyone who's looking at a place in their life when they're not able to trust, they're not able to let go, not able to say, what value do I have? And to me, everyone, you have to get to this humble place of surrender first as I was certainly on my knees. And as I keep being, it's not just that it happens once. God keeps reminding me that his plans are better than mine, to my great annoyance. But it's the sense that, something in me that the world may not value, but something in me is not really wrong. It's quite right. I need to give this voice to, this is what makes my heart sing. This makes me weep, cry, shout, jump for joy. That's what I'm here to do. That's what I'm going to do. I wrote this book to tell others and myself, keep doing that.
Yeah, it's a scary path at times.
Yes.
Particularly when you're looking at that blank page. I've been there. You have been there too. But to totally, one gets the sense reading the book that this is not just a craft for you. This is getting out of the way to let the real author shape this work.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's always a little frightening.
Well, it's a lot frightening, and it's also dangerous because it's so easy to be arrogant and self-aggrandizing. You know, I rail against the false gods of Hollywood. It's like the Oscar is literally a golden calf, a golden idol. But so is money, so are our illusions of power and fame and all of those things. But the more dangerous idolatry is the self-idolatry. To turn in and say, oh, God is speaking through me. That's dangerous too. You got to get out of the way of that one as well. But the fact of the matter is, when a great story, a great song, a great poem, a great letter, or a great word to my sons comes, I didn't do it. God gave it to me. It's God. It's love speaking to love. That's the way I see it.
You also pray before you write, which you reveal in the book. And you have the whole prayer there. It's a beautiful prayer, which I'm going to steal and put on the edge of my desk now. How long have you been doing that? Why do you do it?
I have been doing it since that Braveheart moment. And part of it is that I know how readily I fall into the sense that this is all up to me. And if I do it well, it's my doing. I know how dangerous that is, how easy it is. The other thing is that it's a discipline. Like if you look at great golfers, basketball players, I remember J.J. Redick went to Duke, and he's this great player, great foul shooter, and I heard him talk one time about shooting foul shots, and he said, I say this prayer, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He says that in his head every time before he shoots a foul shot. The discipline of it reminds us and clears out the other mess.
All the muck. Now, well, you see it. That clarity breaks through, whether it's when we were soldiers. And what I love about the book is it really isn't just living the Braveheart life. It's much broader than that. You bring in Hal Moore, the great hero from When We Were Soldiers, a great man I interviewed. You weave in your own life with these tales that you've told so well, but they really have become iconography for so many people in the popular imagination. Braveheart and When We Were Soldiers, I think particularly for men, they take on something larger. They become their own narrative in the American sense. They're our Greek, they're our Homer. In some ways, you're our Homer.
Well,
do you feel that? Do you sense that 20 years later?
Ray, I feel that I've certainly got a big and dangerous ego, but I truly feel that stories come as much from the audience as they come from the author. The author isn't the author. Just as I say, and he's on the cover of the book. You know, I'm thought of as the author of Braveheart, but this tale was the author of me. And I think that the book shines a light on passions that are within everyone. I think that's the power of a book, to light someone up.
The other night you mentioned to me, Thomas Wolfe said, and I'm paraphrasing, that fiction is one part memory and one part desire.
Yeah.
Which would you say informs Braveheart for you personally?
There's a great deal of memory in the story, and we could argue about collective or genetic memory, or the memory of our tribe. It was striking to me that someone wrote me a letter when they had seen Braveheart. A stranger wrote me a letter and said, "It was so great to see American history portrayed this way." And at first, in my office, we were looking at this laughing and thinking, this may say a lot more than we think it's saying.
Yeah, that's true.
That, where was this notion among common men and women who said, we're going to take on the most powerful army on earth with an idea that no one has ever made work before. We're going to stand on this thing and say, you know what? Not today. We're no longer your slaves. We are not yours to do with. We are all gonna have our voice. We're gonna be equal. That kind of thing. That stirred me up. So, is that memory or desire? It's both at the same time.
It's mingled for you.
Like, I think that courage and faith are largely the same thing.
One feeds the other, and they're intertwined.
Yes.
You really can't have one without the other.
Not
if you're going to live it out. There's a wonderful line here that jumped out at me where you say, "I've learned that wounds are just as important as our weapons." How do those wounds shape Randy Wallace? And do you pass those wounds on to the next generation?
Well, the second part first. That's one of the scariest things for me. Do I pass my wounds to my children, or do I give them the strength to avoid them? I have said, my sons, we're friends. And I have said to my sons, if I had my way, I would take away from you everything that will make you a man. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every bloody nose, every skint knuckle. I would remove it all. I would fight every fight for you if I could.
Yeah.
But that's how they become men, and they get their own wounds, their own scars. I don't want to pass mine along, in that I want to bear my own wounds. I say in the book something about that I learned from my father's wounds, and largely his wounds did become mine. The wound that kills us is the one inside our armor, the one we ignore, the one we don't open up and say, look, I'm bleeding here. And somebody's got to know how to touch that wound and how to heal it. That's another thing. When I hear the Jesus story, I go, all right, this story strikes me as so true. It has the ring of truth in all of the Gospels. I'll read a story and I'll know how everything is going to fall, because I've told enough stories and I have enough story sense, and that's when a story seems false to me. But when a story surprises you, when you go, I didn't see this coming. Like I think in Braveheart, people didn't expect that William Wallace is going to be executed. They think surely somebody's going to swing in on vines and save him.
Right.
But then you see it happen and you go, you know what? This is how life works. And the life that surprises you at the end, when it transforms everyone, not only Robert the Bruce, but the men who followed him, then that strikes us as true as well.
Yeah. The great line that people always remember from Braveheart, and that really is the spine of this book, is every man dies, but not every man really lives. How do you live the Braveheart life that you depict in this book, and that is captured in your great work?
That's the question I wanted to explore in writing this. I didn't want to tell Hollywood stories. I didn't want to, there's so many people who love Braveheart and they love to hear the story, but it's the question you just asked. How do we live this now? And to me, it's wrapped up in that statement. We all die. but that doesn't kill the really living part. It's the acceptance. I mean, where that line came from, again, was inspired by the Gospels.
Yeah.
Jesus has been teaching his disciples. They've been with him almost without any restriction for 3 years. And yet he knows that they're all going to run away. Nobody's going to understand him. They're going to deny him. One's going to betray him. And yet he doesn't make the situation ethics decision, the rational one, to say, I should just back off here and go into the mountains and teach some more until they really understand.
And catch up.
And that my measure of who I am and what I will do will be judged by the standards of, do they understand? Let's have a show of hands. How many here believe that I'm here to transform you and save your lives? Oh, no one? Okay, well, let's wait until I can get there. But he makes a choice that's above and beyond the question of what do we understand, how does the world judge us? It's who are we made to be? Let's be that, because this body will die. But that's how we really live. For me, that's the best way I know to put it.
And 20 years, I can't believe it's been 20 years.
Oh, me neither.
Since Braveheart came. I want to end talking for a moment about working with Mel. I know you all have been collaborators on not just Braveheart, but a number of projects. I know you continue working with him. What did he bring to that particular film that might have been lost in the hands of another actor or director?
So many things. Absolute commitment. Now, but that alone isn't enough. But absolute commitment. That's there's an all-in quality about Mel.
Yeah.
But that was coupled with an appreciation for what the story was and what it spoke of. Mel got something that I don't know any other director who would have gotten, and I was not directing at the time, so right. I couldn't have, I had to grow into that role, but he understood when William Wallace is on his knees in the dungeon, praying, give me the strength, I'm so afraid, give me the strength to die well. He's like, oh, well, that's Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Yes,
He saw
you're right.
it.
He saw, he understood, he got it all. And we began to resonate with each other and not feel that either of us was so alone in this. We began to say, aha, we get each other.
I remember when The Passion came out and people said, you know, it's a shame Mel didn't do The Passion, didn't act in The Passion. I said, sure he did. He just did it 10 years earlier.
And in a certain way, every character is
a refashioning of Jesus and a way to try to apprehend him.
right.
Right?
And you put yourself into every character. Leonardo DiCaprio, was in Man in the Iron Mask with Gabriel Byrne.
Another great movie, by the way, which
And-
you all should go buy. My boys love this movie. It's an adventure. It's about honor. It's about all the things.
Yes.
Really, it's about all the things you were doing in Braveheart as well. But go on. I'm sorry.
Right, and about your identity as well.
Right.
Who are you? And Gabe was asked why he. I think it was on one of the big talk shows when he was asked the question. But he was asked, why did you choose to be in this movie? And he said, well, I thought every character was powerful. And he said, I think that's because Randall saw himself as every character. And then he paused with this little Irish twinkle and he said, probably including the Queen. And the funny thing was, he's absolutely right.
Yeah.
In every character, you see yourself.
You yank
and you
a part of
say,
yourself,
if I were her, if these were the tools I had and these were the obstacles I faced, how would I feel?
Yeah.
And that's how you write a character that an actor looks at and says, I want to play that because I see that in myself. And that's why I say, for an audience, for a young man, a young woman who is looking at this book, It's not to tell them the stories of Randall Wallace. It's to say, who are you? What is in your life? What are the stories that when you tell this story or you hear this story, that you go, this is me?
Randy Wallace, thank you for the time.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Raymond. Thank you, my
Excellent.
friend.
As I often say, every man dies, but not every man can be interviewed on the world over. Forgive me, Randy. Living the Braveheart Life by Randall Wallace is available at bookstores everywhere and online.